Welcome to the Amiya Show. Here's your host, the one and only Amiya. That wasn't even that funny. Why are people laughing? Why am I getting booed? Wow, would you look at that? It's Supporter Nights o'clock. Time to talk about supporters. Supporters support. The name's pretty obvious, but the way these operators go around supporting your allies varies from branch to branch, from providing strong crowd control to debuffing the enemies to buffing your own ops. Diesel binders, or slowers as the community mainly calls them, are the first archetype people usually think of when you mention supporters. This branch has operators like Angelina, Suzuran, Estina, Earth Spirit, and Orchid. They deal arts damage and inflict sluggish with their attacks. Sluggish is a special type of slow that reduces enemy movement speed by 80% and doesn't stack on top of itself. It's different from straight up movement speed reduction, which does stack with itself. If movement speed reduction and sluggish are applied at the same time, they stack. Yeah, it's semi-convoluted and confusing, but that's how this works. This archetype features a DP cost around 16, and even though they're in the supporter class, you shouldn't underestimate the damage that this branch can do. There are only two operators of the Bard branch right now in Global, Skalter and Sora, with Heidi coming on Chapter 10's release. This branch has operators with diamond-shaped ranges that passively heal all allies in their range for 10% of the attack per second. Yes, the same passive healing that heals enmity operators, summons, and gorilla shield guards in that M86 stage. They're extremely cheap to deploy, probably because they can't really do anything by themselves, and they come with their own special buff called Inspire, which basically lets them buff allies based on the Bard's own stats. For this reason, their stats aren't that high, but they can be a very powerful asset to help out your squad, getting extra survivability or damage. The Abjurer archetype is infamous for being consistently garbage. This branch only has Tsukinogi right now in Global, but 9-colored Deer and Quercus are soon gonna be added. Right now they attack off skill and on skill, but in the future the branch will change to attack off skill and heal on skill. Another thing all Abjurers have in common is their ability to grant allies the Shelter effect in their talents, which reduces both physical and arts damage taken. Shelter is a great damage reduction ability, but the talent conditions Abjurers have for it to apply is just... except for Quercus. She's actually pretty good. They have a DP cost just a bit higher than Bards, around the 12 DP mark, and Abjurers also have better defensive stats than the other ranged supporters, with actually decent HP and defense for a ranged operator. Hexers are exactly what they sound like. They have an extremely wide range compared to the default range of the other supporters, with a low DP cost of 12 or 13. Hexers feature talents with Fragile. If you've heard of it as weakening, it's the exact same thing but reworded because woo yeah, inconsistent translations. Fragile doesn't stack on top of itself, and only the highest one takes effect. This debuff makes the enemy take more damage after defense and arts resistance come into play, which means that you're supposed to use this debuff when you're already dealing decent damage. Hexer's skills usually provide even more debuffing by lowering enemy defense or arts resistance on top of that fragile, which can help you get in damage by a lot. Artificers are the only branch of supporters that are placeable on melee tiles, but their stats overall aren't really built for dealing damage or even blocking. They are also the only type of supporters that deal physical damage instead of arts with their basic attacks. These ops have a higher cost than the other branches, ranging around the 18 DP mark. Artificers have talents that give them deployable summons that give various buffs to other ops, and their skills can refresh or enhance these summons. Roberta is the only Artificer in Global for now, but she'll be joined by Winflet later. And lastly, we have Summoners. These guys have talents that allow them to deploy summons, obviously, that's why it's in the name. What makes them different from Artificers is that the summons can act as actual ops with DPS and blocking capabilities, albeit on a weaker level. Unless you happen to be a certain blue woman, then you break the entire game's balancing. Summoners themselves have a relatively low DP cost under 10, but then you remember that you have to deploy the summons that cost even more DP. In general, it's not worth it to bring these guys into a full squad because their summons are weaker than than regular operators, but still comes with that valuable deployment slot, unless, again, you happen to be a certain blue woman. On to our first topic for today. What are your thoughts on hot dogs? Yeah, I think they're really delicious too, but you know me, always trying to watch my diet. Anyways, what condiments do you like on your hot dogs, Amia? Peanut butter and whipped cream? Amia, have you been doing sugar packs again? Suzuran Woo Yeah, our light, has been consistently used in any hard content ever. Her first talent gives all supporter operators more SP per second when she's deployed, while her second talent applies a 20% fragile debuff if enemies in her range have the sluggish effect. Even though she is a slower supporter, Suzuran's basic attacks don't benefit from her own fragile talent because fragile is applied after the sluggish effect is. Her level 1 module helps her regenerate more SP if enemies are in range, which, yes, stacks on top of her talent, and she gets an amount of HP and attack speed from the added stats. The upgraded versions give supporters extra attack, which is nice, but not really necessary unless you're like a supporter Knights player. Assuming an enemy is always in her range when she has her module, Suzuran's S3 downtime, which is her main skill, drops by slightly over 6 seconds, which can actually mean a lot in optimized strats, but the level 2 and 3 modules aren't really too impactful. The reason why Suzuran is our savior is that glorious third skill. It expands her range and passively heals all allies in that range. It also makes that second talent twice as effective, basically getting 40% extra damage on all slowed enemies, and applies sluggish to all the enemies in range. So basically, mega slow, mega damage amp in the mega range with a slight amount of healing. What's even better is that since Suzuran's damage amp debuff is fragile, it stacks on top of Zarya's S3 arts damage amp. Fragile is applicable to all damage types, so you can use Suzuran to enhance Caster and Mia S3's true damage or Silver Ash's TSS. The slow gathers up all the enemies really nicely too, helping your other operators get even more hits in. The skill uptime is very long at 35 seconds, so you're not panicking to try to get all the damage in. Obviously, the fragile and crowd control on this skill are the main reasons why you'd want to use it, but that passive healing comes in really handy too. Again, people immediately assume the uses for passive healing are enmity operators like Helliger, but you can heal supporter summons, Nightingale cages, and the shield guards in M86. Because of Suzuran's versatile kit, she's been consistently used in almost every CC since her release. Pyrite for global, Cinders, Lead Seal, Spectrum, Wild Scales, Pine Suit for the right side tags, No Stalling Dawnseeker, and whatever the hell happened in Deepness. One thing I think people undermine about Suzuran are her pots. Her pots are your usual operator pots until you get that glorious 5th potential similar to Bagpipe. An extra 3% damage amp doesn't seem like much, but her S3 turns that into 6%, which can mean so much more in challenge runs. I already made a guide on Skalter, so for this video I'm just going to highlight her S1 and S3 usages since I'm an S1 shiller and those are the less commonly used skills. Skalter is in the Bard branch, meaning she doesn't attack but passively heals all allies in her range for 10% of her attack every second. Her first talent gives her a Seaborn that acts as an extension of her range, which actually gives her pseudo-global range, which is a really great benefit to her. Skalter's second talent increases her attack if there are allies in her range and increases it some more if there are Abyssal Hunters in her range. Since Skalter is a buffer, she is always bound to have allies in her range, so you'll always get that extra attack for a better Inspire buff on her second and third skills. However, many of you sleep on that beautiful skill 1. JTA3 fireballs? Not a problem as long as she isn't tanking them directly. Wanna take a Hammer Knight slam? Sure, go ahead. Wanna be a pure sociopath like me and do max risk CC7 no guards or snipers while stalling free by cycling passive healing on Nightingale cages and Mudrock? Yep. The healing effect is multiplied by however many allies are in range because she's healing everyone all at once, and on top of sharing damage between allies, this skill is the best versatile skill for survivability, hands down. I definitely wouldn't recommend putting masteries on it since it requires planning to actually use, but it's just such a good skill. Skalter S3 use cases are where you'd expect them to be. Great attack buffing on physical damage ops, mainly anti-air snipers because they have an extremely fast attack interval. The total damage on this skill is not that high, but it can still deal a decent chunk to bosses or elite mobs because of the true damage ignoring tanky stats, which was used in this clear to kill these bubble rep guys in Spectrum. Hey, it was just one harmless joke, alright? I didn't think it'd hurt you this much. I think you're doing a great job quitting sugar packs, going to rehab, seeking therapy, and all of that. Yeah, sorry, I won't make jokes like that again. Wait, we're still rolling? Why didn't you tell us? The Amiya show has been cancelled due to lack of production staff, with the majority were found convicted of several crimes including money laundering, embezzlement, credit card fraud, bribery.